Hello, everyone, and welcome again to episode 6 of the More Than a Game podcast. I'm Aaron, and with me, I've got Matt. And recently, we've been thinking about styles of playing football. Obviously, we watch a lot of football, so it's something that we think about and we look at a lot. And I suppose something I've been thinking about a lot is possession football. It's something that I love watching, and I think especially being an Arsenal supporter. I know I've spoken about Arsenal a lot recently and Thierry Henry, but I just absolutely love possession football, and I know a lot of people say that possession doesn't necessarily win games. However, I think I've always said to every team I coach, and teams that I've played for, and when I watch something on the telly, is that if you haven't got the ball, you can't score. Like if you've got possession of the ball, yeah, you might not score, but you are in a position to score a goal. Okay, so I suppose the best way for me to look at it is if the goalkeeper takes a goal kick, and I know there's a lot of talk about playing out from the back when it comes to football, and a lot of teams try to do it and can't necessarily do it. However, if your goalkeeper just pings the ball upfield, there's a chance you lose the ball. However, if your goalkeeper passes the ball to the centre back, who passes it to the right back, who passes it to the right midfielder, yeah, you may well lose the ball. But in terms of possession football, I think you've got a much better chance to score a goal. So I suppose that's definitely sort of a positive when it comes to possession football. And I suppose if you look at it from the opposite side, I guess the opponents can't score. All the time you've got the ball, the other team can't score. Which I think if you look at a team like Man City are a great example. Teams struggle to get the ball off of Man City. Barcelona are the same. If you've got possession of the ball, all the time you've got the ball, you're starving the other team of the ball. So I suppose, yes, if you've got possession, you can score. But then all the time you've got possession, I was going to say the opponents and the opposition at the same time. But yeah, the opposition also can't score, which is obviously a positive for the team in possession. I suppose sort of one other thing to touch on with possession football is, and it's probably my favourite thing about watching possession football, is the way that it pulls players out of position. I think, again, I touched on sort of Man City, Barcelona, is the way that teams move the ball and that ball going from side to side may not necessarily look like it's doing a great deal on it. And a lot of people sort of think, oh, well, they're just moving the ball from one side of the pitch to the other. But what they're obviously trying to do is they're being patient, trying to pull players out of position to create those sort of gaps and those spaces to attack into. And I suppose just on the same sort of line of thinking here is it also wears down the opposition. Again, you look at teams that have possession, and the amount of times you hear people say, "Oh, well, it's the 70th minute and they still haven't scored," but all that possession, it can wear down the opposition. There's only so much pressing you can do in a game before you get tired. If you think one team's got possession, the other team's obviously working hard to try and get that ball back. And I think when you're pressing the ball, that sort of constant working to try and get the ball, it might not necessarily be a full-on sprint for the full 70 minutes or whatever it's been before then, but eventually we've all been there chasing a team that keeps the ball well. You get tired. You do get tired. It doesn't matter whether you're sprinting or whether you're just whether it's a half press, but yeah. So I think there's so many good things about possession football, and it can be fantastic. But I think we say this on probably most podcasts. You've got to have the right players to do it. You've got to have the right players, the right team. It's got to be coached well. But yeah, love it. Absolutely love possession football.
Yeah, so I love possession football as well. As anyone that knows me, I love to keep the ball and everything. I think it's just fantastic. It's some of my favourite teams to watch, and like Man City's right now, your Barcelona's, your Bayern Munich's. Internationally, I love watching Spain. I love the way they gain possession, but then doesn't always win your games. Does not always win your games. So I would counteract that by saying, how many times have you seen, there's loads of examples. The one that always sticks in my mind is when Celtic beat Barcelona, and I believe they had, I think Celtic had 11% possession. Get my words out. 11%. Yeah, so they had 11% possession. They won the game. They won the game. 11%, which is it's just incredible. Where we've had loads of examples recently. So I suppose it's well and good having the ball. And like you said, if you've got the ball, you can definitely score. But if you're not doing anything with it, then what's the point? If you're just passing backwards and sideways the whole time, and like some teams do. Some teams you hit the nail on the head with. You've got to have the right players to do it. Because if you're going to keep possession, and your manager wants you to keep the ball, it's easy to play a sideways and backwards pass. Not easier, sorry, it's not easy. But then who then plays that forward pass to still maintain the ball? Who's that person? Who you got to have risky players. You've got to have players who are clever or got good vision. So if you haven't got that player, I play teams at grassroots level. I know it's very different to Premier League level and international level, but I play teams that have tried to keep the ball, playing men's football and kids football, managing games, and I'll just say to my boys and girls, just let them have the ball. They're not doing anything with it. They think it's cool because Barcelona do it, but they don't know how to actually keep the ball and how to then progress it into the final third. So let them have the ball. They're going to lose it at some stage. So when they lose it, then we can then catch on the counter or make use of the ball. So I would say that you shouldn't. Yeah, it's good to keep the ball, but what are you doing with it? What are you doing with the football? There's so many teams that, Man City, they're very good. They build it, and you can see they're going forward with the ball constantly, and not just the ball's moving forward, players are moving forward. As they're moving forward, the fullbacks are going forward. I was watching John Stones the other day. The amount of times he was against Leeds, the amount of times he was in the final third was ridiculous. So they've got players moving forward as well, and they're trying to work it. But then there's so many teams. I think you said about Arsenal at one stage, like probably to the back end of Wenger's managerial career, they just keep the ball for fun, and then nothing really happened in the final third. Or there's some teams now who think it's fashionable to play out from the back, but then don't really know how to then get the ball into the midfield. It's like, it's all well and good playing from the back, but what are you going to do with it? So, yeah, possession is good, but it's what you do with it. And possession doesn't win you football games. So, but then, like you said, Aaron was teaching today, and I think you had the same conversation with the kids. You said, does possession win you games? And they all went, no, and gave all these examples. One child went, yeah, Man City. So, which is so funny. I remember you told me that today. It made me laugh at. So, it's a good answer. So I love keeping the ball. I don't like not having the ball. I like getting the ball back quickly and whatever, but it doesn't win you games. And I think, like you said, the players you've got, I've had teams before where I haven't had the players who are not technically as good, okay? Not being rude, just that they've got other attributes like, loads of different things I won't go into because I go off subject, but our strength wasn't to keep the ball. Our strength was to get behind the ball and then hit them on the counter attack or get quick crosses in, etc., etc. So yeah, but another way, a good style of play, which I love, is a defensive game plan, like defensive structure. I love it. I love it. And I've always been a striker, but I think I've kind of learned where I've always been a striker playing against a defence and what's hard to play against. So, and I've always picked up in it, and I've never actually done it myself. I played centre back maybe once or twice in my life, not at a good level, but I love like defensive structure. I love it when you lose the ball and everyone knows where they should be. When you move across the field as a unit, when you one player presses the ball, one covers. When you kind of let the other team have the ball in their own half, for example. Wait for your chance to then, when you get it, don't waste it. Quick. If they're going to keep the ball and build loads of players like Man City in the final third, and you're defending, when you win it, can you make the most of it? I love that. And you're going to get a lot less chances, but it's so good keeping a clean sheet. I love keeping a clean sheet. And sometimes if you haven't got the team, if you think of like the Premier League teams in the bottom, say the bottom 10 teams, they mainly all of them, if not all of them, play with a defensive game plan, because they know that if they get a clean sheet, they might get a free kick and someone might score from a free kick or a set piece or whatever. And it's all about that clean sheet, that structure. And I love that structure. I love the how you got like leaders at the back that kind of organise where to go. And it's all about not diving in and jumping in and being too eager. It's about being patient. It's so hard playing a defensive game plan because you have to be so disciplined, so concentrated, especially playing a team like Man City. Keep ball. You've got to be on it the whole time. So I love it when, I think the person who's perfected it the most is Diego Simeone. He's absolutely perfected that defensive game plan because he's got them structured from, they know where to be on set pieces defensively. They know when the right midfielder gets the ball, everyone knows where to be. They know who to press at the right time. They know when to attack. They know when they've got the ball, they can be patient with it. And then when they lose it, bang, back in a defensive structure so quick. And it's like, there's nothing more exciting for me than a clean sheet in football. I love a clean sheet, especially coaching. It's not interesting to watch. I get that. Some people will be thinking, oh, that's not an exciting match of the day. But as a manager, keeping a clean sheet is one of the most rewarding things out there. So I love a defensive game plan.
It's funny because I've always said, like, I firmly believe, and well, it's a fact, that if you keep a clean sheet, you've only got to score one goal to win the game. And it is. I suppose it's true to a certain extent, isn't it? But I suppose when it comes to like a defensive game plan, and I think you were sort of right there, Matt, in terms of like the sort of bottom half of the Premier League, and any team sort of who's not the favourite to win a game will obviously go with a defensive game plan more often than not, because you're obviously trying to nullify the opposition. But what you do find in quite often, and you do see it quite often in the Premier League, I guess, as well, is sometimes, and I suppose it's quite often when a team defends quite deep as well, because obviously a defensive game plan doesn't have to necessarily be deep. It can be, your defensive line can be a little, sort of the whole team as a unit can be higher, but obviously a lot of people talk about the defensive line. But it can obviously invite pressure, and I mean we've all seen those games, or we've even been in them. I mean, I've played in teams before where we've gone out in a defense, or coach teams where we've gone out in a defensive shape, playing a defensive game plan, park the bus, I suppose, as they quite commonly say. Jose Mourinho is quite well known for it nowadays. But like, there's nothing worse than being in a game where you're just inviting and soaking up pressure. Like, just it's tiring. It's tough. It's tough. And I mean, sometimes a team. I've watched games where teams have literally soaked up pressure and just invited pressure on them for the whole game. And they must come away from that game absolutely knackered. However, I guess obviously sometimes that pressure can eventually break down, I guess. And I suppose a big issue I find with a defensive game plan quite often, and very often, and I think you actually spoke about this, Matt, a few podcasts ago, is having a plan B. Quite often, I think when a team goes with a defensive game plan, they have no plan B, and it's like you've set out to nullify the opposition, which is fine. I'm with you when it comes to like Diego Simeone. I absolutely love Simeone, and I love a clean sheet. I think I'm a bit sad when it comes to football, and I quite happily watch a team defend really, really well and go and win a game 1-0 or whatever it is. But I think, like, when a team has gone out with a defensive game plan and they're clearly not the favourites to win the game, and then they concede a goal after 10, 20 minutes and nothing changes, that's I think where that's sort of a downside to the whole sort of defensive game plan mentality. But I suppose you could argue that is part of the defensive game plan, is having a plan B, because you might not necessarily be able to keep up the levels of defensive work that you have to put in. Like we just spoke about possession football, and I think you said about it as well, playing like a team like a Man City, it's not just getting your shape and sit there and chill. You're working harder. This defensive game plan is I think a lot of people think it's quite basic. You just go out and everyone just defends and tackles, but it's harder than that. It's a lot of hard work. So I think it's about, obviously, quite often not having a plan B can be sort of a detriment. It can have a detrimental effect. Sorry, should I say, on the team defending. Another sort of thing I notice quite a lot with the defensive game plan is quite often where teams are so sort of deep and are so defensively minded, they often find it hard to play out. And I think, like, you see, like I say, I keep saying about obviously a sort of a less favoured team against a stronger team, which is quite often, it's very rare that a stronger team would go defensive against a weaker team, shall we say. But I mean, how often do we see teams sort of sitting quite deep and they do win the ball back because they've defended really well, and then within 5 seconds they've lost the ball because they're so deep and there's no outlet, there's no midfield player to play the ball into, there's no striker because the striker's even dropped in to defend, and before you know it, they're back to defending again, and that sort of it's just full circle. It then comes back round to that pressing again, and it's So I think quite often because teams are so deep, they do win the ball back. I don't know. Let's say the right back wins it back, and ordinarily the right back would play it straight into the centre midfielder's feet or the right midfielder's feet. But then that player's maybe not necessarily there because the right midfielder might be alongside the right back because they've doubled up on the left winger or whatever. So I do think sometimes teams do find it very hard to play out, and there's obviously not that outlet that you would maybe have in other styles of play. But yeah, it's an interesting style of play, and one that I think is more modernly used. Well, I think it kind of went away a little bit. It's sort of come back a bit again, which is quite cool. Really, I suppose it just shows how football is. It's just things sort of go and come back again. But yeah, so moving on again is another one like which kind of moves on from where we just were. Really is like the counter attack, which is like it's a style of play that I don't always use, but I do love using it. Like I think it's a sort of style of play that the lesser teams would use against the stronger team. But yeah, it's fun. It's a sort of style of play that I absolutely love, and I think the reason I love it is I love quick football. Like I hate it when the game's slow. So I love it when a team sort of sits in deep. Well, I say deep, obviously not too deep. I think one of my favourite things is that kind of, I suppose, when I say directness, I don't necessarily mean directness as in like a long ball forward, but I mean sort of that sort of high energy when you win that ball back. How quickly can you get the ball from point A to B? And that's like I said, that's not necessarily a long ball into the strikers, in front of the striker into a channel, but it might just be you win the ball back on the edge of your box, bang, it goes into the centre midfielder, and then it's into the right midfielder, and you're getting a cross in within 5 seconds. But I just love that sort of. It's almost like I suppose you're inviting your opponent onto you to then pounce on them. I always used to say to my teams, it was like an animal, sort of enticing its prey, and then when the time was right, I was about to do the action then, but only you'll see it, Matt. But that's how I always used to sort of explain it to especially to younger children, so they kind of understood what a counter attack meant. But yeah, I think it's kind of that. I love that enticing the other team onto you with the ball, and quite often it could be a team sort of playing a possession sort of style of play to then pounce on them and hit the spaces wherever those spaces may be. And I think the other sort of thing with the counter attack sort of style of play is like sort of the energy levels. I suppose when you're sitting back and defending, depending on sort of how high or how little you're pressing, it can sort of conserve energy a little bit, because you just sort of drop back, get rather than sort of pushing on and pressing the ball, you sort of drop back, get yourself a little bit of a breather, and then boom, go off you go. That's where you yeah.
You had to do your animal action then, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's more like a click. It's like a coach's click and a little like. But yeah, I think like it's that sort of drop back in. Then you have your breather. It's not a breather. It's not a standstill and have a rest. But essentially, it is a breather before, in terms of what's about to come. It is a breather because you're sort of dropping back in to sort of calm the game down, try and slow the game down before you then bomb on and try and attack those spaces. So I think it's like, I think one of the best things about sort of the counter attack is the unknown. It's the surprise element of it. Whereas I think obviously with like a possession style of football, you kind of know to a certain extent what's coming, and you kind of know they're going to be looking for those little through balls, and you can see them moving the ball. I'm sure using my hands again, even though I can see that. But so with the counter attack, it's that element of surprise which I think makes it such an effective style of play. No, you don't necessarily know when it's coming. It's because obviously the second you lose the ball, bang, it's there, and you can't plan for that. You can't plan for losing the ball. You don't know when you're going to lose the ball. So yeah, I absolutely love it. I love counter-attacking football because, like I said, because of the high intensity, and I love high intensity football. Absolutely love it.
It's exciting, isn't it? It's exciting to watch as well, because you know that if you've got the players, we keep talking about having the right players, and I feel like, you know, especially coaches, they need to look at their team and go, can you really counter-attack with like the slowest wingers in the world? Like if you got, I don't know, I'm not going to name names, I feel bad, even though I don't know them, but I've got a few wingers in my mind that are not the fastest players in the world in the Premier League. Would you play counter-attack football? Absolutely not. Or someone who can really catch you it's exciting to watch. It's like a catapult, isn't it? Like you said with your animal actions there, it's like a catapult, boom. But then like, I think you've got to have the players to do it first of all. I mean, if you haven't, I think it's just pointless because if you've got a speedy team, you're only gonna play counter-attack football when you've got a team who's got, like we mentioned at the start, going to have possession, a lot of the ball. Then you're waiting for them to lose it, and then bang, then you pounce them, like you said, like that animal. Like, I'm doing it now. But if you haven't got the players, I think it's just pointless. So I think definitely know if you've got the players to do it and understand it and know when to do it, that's great. But there's no point in counting. How many times I've tried to do counter attack a few times, and you win the ball back, you're like, well, we're going, and you lose it in seconds, like run off the pitch, you get too excited, and it's like, oh, it's such a waste, and then it becomes demoralising. So you're like, hang on, the manager told us to counter attack. We worked on it in training. We did some sessions on it, and we can't even get past the halfway line. That's demoralising. So you've got to do it well. But I think if I'm defending against a team who counter attack, I'm playing a keeper sweep all day long. We're gonna excuse me. We're gonna push all our players as far forward as we can. But I want my keeper sweeper, and I want 2 units. I want 2 almost like different teams, and I feel like if you divide the team into 2 units when you've got the ball, it completely counterattacks the counter-attack. Because if I've got, I don't know, back 4, for example, and then my fullbacks are bombed on, everyone's in the final third, we're keeping the ball, trying to find an opening, they're waiting for the counter-attack. All I need is my centre-backs to split, keep an eye on the wingers, my holding midfield players to drop in, keep an eye on the striker, maybe leave another one behind if you really want to, it depends on what you want, and just be aware of it. Because then you've got you've got like that second unit who are there especially for the counter attack. Their job is to watch the counter attack. So while you've got your striker, your attacking midfielder, your wingers, even your fullbacks doing their thing in the final third, like 1-2s, kind of getting the ball in the box, etc., playing cutbacks, playing at 1-2s and that. While they're doing that, my second unit, they're at the back, just covering. They're literally waiting for. I know that winger there wants to run into that space. I know he wants to do that. I know as soon as they get the ball, they're going to play into his feet. I know the striker's feet. Then he's going to set someone else off. Then they go in the counter-attack and they're attacking numbers. If you've got a second unit prepared for that, it's great. And I've had teams do that. I knew they were going to catch in the counter-attack. I've done it before. It's so rewarding. So you nullify that counter-attack. It's like, you can't do that. You can't do it because I've got you covered. So it's all well and good having a counter-attack, but I would say it's got to be done at the right time and you've got to use it well. You have to use it well. And I feel like if you've got players that watch these players specifically, then you can definitely you can stop the counter-attack easily. And also as well, like one thing that I would always say to my players that, anyone listening to this that probably even manage against me or I've coached, I hate tackling. I like when players just press the ball and slow the opposition down. So even if they get you on the counter-attack and the person who's playing the ball quickly, like quickly forward or setting someone quickly or even dribbling with the ball, if you can get someone to get them quick and slow them down, you haven't got to do anything. You haven't got to tackle them. You haven't got to, you see, actually I'll comment on that in a minute about drawing a foul, but if you can just slow them down, what does that do? It gives time for everyone to recover. So if you can slow the counter down as well, so rather than saying, just a minute ago I was saying about stopping it, sometimes you can't stop it, but you can slow it down. If you slow it down, these teams haven't got that plan B after time, because then they have to resort to possession football or maybe the long ball. So if you can offset them and kind of get them off their game plan, that's so good to watch. I love doing that to teams. I love when they've clearly got a plan and you've completely nullified it, and it's like, oh no, what do I do? I mean, it's great. Then there's the bad way, which people will laugh at, but you can just kick them and draw a foul if you want to stop. How many times have you seen that? Someone's on the counter attack and they take a yellow card for the team. I mean, you see it all the time. And I would never encourage that. I never would, but you see it all the time in the Prem. Team catches the team on a counter attack. They take a foul and they take one for the team. So that's another way to nullify the the counter attack. Not that I'd suggest anyone kicks anyone, just to make that very clear. Next one I wanted to look at was the high press. A high press. Oh my god, it's exciting. It's so good to watch. Barcelona probably made it very famous. Liverpool are incredible at it. Currently, maybe not currently this season, but especially the last couple of seasons, Man City are very good. I watched Bayern Munich the other day; they're very good at it. I watched another team the other day who were very good at it. Who is that? It's going to bug me now. I can't remember. It'll come to me in a minute. But the teams that play the high press just give the other team no time on the ball. It's so good to watch. It's so exciting to watch because it kind of panics the other team. And they've got no time on the ball. So if you can give the other team no time on the ball and panic them and offset them, that's so good. So I love a high press. You've got, someone pressing the ball. You've got the player next to him, so you've got the right midfielder pressing the left back. You've then got the centre midfielder maybe pushing onto the centre back. You've got the striker pushing onto the other centre back. You've got even the back line pushing on you, really pushing, like pinning them back almost. I don't know why I'm doing the actions again. But yeah, you're pushing them back, and it's so good to watch because especially when it works. If you've got a team who's calm, cool, deal with the high press really well. If you sometimes you see like teams like two high pressing teams like Liverpool, Man City, and it kind of like it clashes in it. It's a clash of styles, and it's like you're going to get excitement and fireworks, and anything can happen. It's kind of like, right, let's have a shootout. Who's gonna score more, basically. But yeah, if you can do a team that especially at grassroots level, I suppose I don't know why I feel bad for saying it. I shouldn't feel bad for saying it. If you do a high press game of grassroots football, a lot of children aren't that comfortable on the ball yet. So if you can really put them off and stop them playing, you're going to get the ball back. Like there's a high percentage you're going to get that ball back. So then I suppose it goes back to the possession game that maybe as coaches need to help these players, especially when they're younger, to be calm on that ball, because when that high press comes in, someone has a style of play of a high press, they can deal well with it. Okay, he's pressed me, it's fine. I can turn into space. I can play a pass. But yeah, I love the high press. I love how it just really offsets and kind of dismantles the other team. It's so good to watch. So and the intensity of it and the it's fun as well. It's fun to like really hunt them down in packs. So yeah, I love the high press, Aaron.
Yeah, like the first. Well, I suppose obviously, like you said about Barcelona doing it, but like the first sort of proper experience I had of it, like really in action, was I remember seeing Liverpool do it at Selhurst Park a few years back, and I've never seen, and it was quite fun actually. I think like this must have been sort of earlier on in Klopp's time with Liverpool. I've never seen a team look so different in 45 minutes. The first 45 minutes, oh wow, the pressing was relentless. And obviously, no disrespect to Palace. Palace are a much weaker team than. Well, I say much weaker. I'm being a bit harsh on Palace, but obviously, yeah. I mean, Palace are not as strong as Liverpool, and Palace just couldn't do anything. Palace could not do anything. Liverpool, the pressing was just, it was crazy. I'd never seen anything like it. I've seen Barcelona play a few times, and I've not seen anything like what I'd seen from Liverpool in this particular game. But then it was almost like someone cast a spell over them. Sorry, in the changing rooms at half time, because they come out second half, and it was like a different team. So I think that one of the biggest issues I find with the higher press is like, without stating the obvious, it's hard work. It's like it's tiring, and I think you've got to have. We're coming with a bit of a theme here, aren't we? You've got to have the right players to play a certain style of play. I mean, we said the same for formations, didn't we? But I don't know whether it's more important for styles of play. Like you could arguably get away with certain things in formations, but like in high press, if you haven't got players that are fit and have got good stamina and will work hard for you and are sort of determined, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. Like you look at Liverpool, you look at their front three, Mane, Firmino, and Salah. Like you could argue they could probably get three better players to play in that front three. But would Lionel Messi do the same job as one of them players? Probably not. Messi's a great player, but he probably wouldn't work as hard and do the pressing that they do because it's not quite Messi's game. I don't know. Someone like, I don't know, Harry Kane. great player, in my opinion. Harry Kane's a better striker than Firmino, but would he put in the work that Firmino puts in? Maybe not. Them three just seem to just do that job up top the best they could. Look at the midfield. The midfield for Liverpool is not the best midfield you've ever seen, but they clearly were all hard working and did the job that they had to do. So I think it's, if your players aren't fit enough, sometimes you can just get burnt out because it's a high intensity way of playing, very, very high intensity. So I think quite often teams can sort of get tired, and I suppose that leads me on to the next sort of point: is everyone's got to buy into it. I was having this chat with someone today, actually, funnily enough, and if one or two players are not buying into whatever the style of play is, and I think in terms of the high press, if one player is not putting the work in, the other team will find that sort of weak link, I suppose, in terms of where the press is not coming from, and we'll try and work the ball to there. And it's got to be done as a team, because if only one or two people are pressing, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. But as we've seen with Liverpool, and that's what won in the league, that style of play, that high press has got to be done by everybody. Everybody's got to buy into it, and that's the whole. Apart from the keeper, I suppose the keeper doesn't do much in terms of pressing, but the whole team has got to press, and the whole team has. The whole team's got to push up. The back line's got to push up with the press. The midfield players have got to push up the press. It's no good the front three pressing and the midfield and defence are deep. So the whole team's got to do it. And quite often you do see teams try and do it, but it's about everyone going as a team. You go as a team. You go as a unit. And obviously, if you don't all go, it's not going to have that. It might still work, but it won't have the full effect. And I think another thing which infuriates me with this sort of style of play, and you've sort of touched on it, Matt, is when people play the high press and dive in. Like, what's the point of playing a high press and then diving into a tackle? You might as well not bother, because the whole idea of a high press is that you press the ball high up the pitch and try and win it back. But if you dive in, there's a possibility a good player is just going to go around you and they play past the press. So I think quite often you see teams try and sort of play a high press, and I don't know whether it's the manager has gone in and said, whether it's at grassroots level, professional level, whatever, the manager says, right, yeah, guys, we're going to press the ball really high, and I want you to get stuck in, go and win that ball back high up the pitch. All right, great, but if you go flying in, first ball gets played back to the right back, you go flying in. Nowadays, right backs are not just there to defend. Right backs can quite often be good players, good on the ball. So the right back will just go, all right, you can come flying into me. I'll just take a touch past you and off I go. So I think quite often teams sort of play it too aggressively, which is a strange thing to say because it's an aggressive style of play. But I think there's a fine line between pressing the ball high up the pitch and being aggressive, but being too aggressive and diving in. And I think it's important to not do that. Because I think when teams do it, you've sort of wasted your time. There's no point doing the high press if you're just going to press the ball really high and dive in. It's not a press then, is it? So you've kind of pressed and then tried to tackle. You don't. I think you look. We keep going back to Liverpool, but I think Liverpool have been probably the best team at the high press in the last few years. I can tell you like any examples of Salah like tackling someone or Wijnaldum tackling someone. I think a lot of the time with a high press, the best high presses just force a mistake. It's not necessarily actually winning the ball, like in terms of stealing or tackling the ball. Quite often it's a mistake. So I suppose sort of the last thing as well, which kind of sort of I suppose links up a little bit with the diving in, is quite often teams can lose their shape when they go with a high press. I think teams can sometimes, again, I don't know whether this is sort of manager instruction or just players getting overexcited, but how often do you see a player come flying out of their position to go and press a ball because they've been told, press the ball high, and the right back thinks, all right, I'll go and press the left back. All right, okay, yeah, great, you're pressing, but if the right back goes bombing in, all it takes is for the left back to go and ping a ball down the line or do whatever, or play a ball into the centre midfielder if they can, and boom, the right back's out of position, and the opposition's obviously in trouble. So I suppose it's about sort of keeping your shape. But yeah, you do often quite see teams get sort of sort of again go too aggressive, I suppose, with the high press, and that's kind of the sort of issue I see with it quite often. But yeah, it's great when it works, but I think it can be knackering, and it can be it's tough to play. It's not just a case of just run and put people under pressure. It can be quite a difficult style of play to sort of play. So yeah. But anyway, sort of moving on. Matt, let's have a look at man marking, shall we? Now, I'm a big fan of man marking. I think I'm a bit old school when it comes to sort of marking on a football pitch, and I suppose it's because I played a position where I sort of tend to get tended. Is that a word? Tend? I don't know what the word is. I suppose I used to sort of get asked to man mark players quite a lot, playing sort of a holding midfield sort of role, and I think there's nothing better in football, and I love it. Like, I don't get me wrong, I love a player like Messi, but I absolutely love it when like someone man marks a player like Messi. I think it's great. And I think it's also then good to watch that player try and get away from the player that they're marking. But there's nothing better, I think, than when a player sort of marks a player really tight, and it can happen all over the pitch. I mean, you could have a left midfielder marking the right back to stop them from overlapping, or it's just quite. I mean, the most common way is a sort of centre back marking a striker. I think there's nothing better than sort of seeing a player man mark a player and nullify their sort of their qualities, I guess, in the game. I think like a sort of another important thing when it comes to man marking is like, and this is like one of my biggest sort of things that frustrate me, I guess, in football. I hate midfield runners. Hate them. I love them on my team. But nothing better than a midfield runner going into the other team's box. But there's nothing worse than a midfield runner running into your own box. And I think if you're man marking and you're staying tight to players, midfield runners shouldn't necessarily. Well, they're still going to run, but they're not going to run into the box and end up being able to tap in a cross or a cutback or get balls played through to them. So I think obviously that tracking of runs is vital, and when you man mark a player, hopefully, like I say, you're not going to prevent those runs, because a player can obviously get that tiny little bit of space even if they are being marked tight. But by man marking, I suppose you limit the success they're going to have from those sort of midfield runs, or not even just midfield runs. I suppose any sort of runs from the midfield or from the fullbacks, I guess. And I suppose the other sort of thing is like when a player man marks a player, and you sort of see it quite a lot from sort of your more sort of combative midfielders, I suppose, and often defenders as well, is like being able to intercept passes, especially if I suppose you're playing a team that's playing a possession sort of style of play. Is obviously if you're not tight enough to someone and the ball gets played into them, you're not going to be able to get there to sort of get there before them. So I suppose it's about being there to sort of prevent that pass coming into their feet, or prevent that ball being played through into the channel or behind your back line, or whatever it may be. And I suppose sort of staying tight to players and man marking players just can prevent the other team from playing. I mean, you look at a team like a Barcelona. Teams will mark a player like Messi out of the game, because they know if they mark Messi out of the game, he's the engine. He keeps them ticking. So they know if you man mark him, he's not going to get the ball played into his feet as often as he would, or he's not going to get the ball played into space in front of him, because there is no space in front of him, because there's always a player marking him tight. And I think it's a great sort of way of sort of playing to nullify. Like I've used that word already, but yeah, it's a great way to nullify the opposition, or particular players on the opposition, or sort of more than one player on the opposition. I mean, it's quite rare to sort of man mark the whole team, I guess, but you'll certainly man mark particular players on a team, which will sort of have a positive impact on your team and a negative impact on their team. But yeah, no, big fan of man marking. I think it can be so effective if used in the right way. But yeah, no, I really like it.
Yeah, man marking's good, but then I just think, like, if you lose your player, then it kind of becomes your fault. It's like, it's that player, and then that player kind of gets singled out, which I never like. It's a team game, isn't it? So, man marking, when it works, it's amazing. You get one player that marks a player, you think, that's amazing, that's great, that's fantastic. And as soon as it all goes wrong and that player scores, it's kind of like pinpointing you. You can kind of ruin your game after that. So I love man marking when it comes to like set pieces. Love that, and I think that kind of is you. Like if it's your player that you're marking, then yeah, it is your fault. Yeah, as harsh as it sounds, but in a game situation, I just feel like more of like a zonal marking is a lot more effective. I don't actually, zonal marking on corners and things like that is up for debate, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. But like, I just feel like in a game, I feel like that's your player. You know, if he's in your zone, you can press him, whatever. But if you're just following the player the whole time, especially something like Messi's somewhere all around all over the pitch sometimes, at least you can afford to have a player that can switch positions and switch up and move around the pitch, then fair enough. But it's a tough one. Also, man marking is that sometimes it can get confusing. Like I said, if players switch positions and you've got to change on the day, adapt on the day, especially if you know someone's man marking you. If I'm coaching a team and someone's man marking the player, I'd switch up and I'd move the positions around, try to offset the team again, even if you did it for 5 minutes, just to lose the balance of their squad and their team and their game plan. So yeah, my marking's all right. It's not one that I'm a massive fan of in free play. But I do like zonal marking. I do like, this is your space. When you haven't got the football, this is your area. So if you're the left back, this is your little zone. Whoever's in that zone, you need to press them, hold them, delay them. And then people can then provide cover. The left side centre back might provide cover, or the holding midfield player, or the left midfielder if they want to track back and cover that player. Yeah, they've got their areas to work on. Then when the ball gets switched over, everyone shuffles over. They've still got their zones. They're working in zones and they're pressing like the nearest man to the ball, nearest player to the ball. So yeah, but then like zonal marking is so good because you kind of got that freedom, that space, rather than just watching that one player. If that player's there and he plays inside and he carries on his run, you can tell your teammate, okay, he's coming in, watch him. They know they're going to be watching that player coming in because they've got that zone to mark in. So it's one that I like a lot.
Yeah, I think do you know what, zonal marking? I think I don't know if you'd agree with this, Matt, or I don't know if the listeners would agree with it. Those that have sort of been involved in grassroots football, especially adults football. I coached the women's team for 1 year. Well, I say I coached the women's team for 1 year. I was in charge of a women's team for 1 year. I wouldn't say I coached them, but I played in men's teams for many years. And I think one of the most common arguments in adults football, and like I say, I can sort of talk in terms of men's football because I played men's football for many years, is like that argument of, who's marking that one that's running through the middle? Like, it's not the centre back's job, it's the midfielder's job. Midfielders then turn around and say, no, it's not our job, it's your job. And it's like that because nobody's been told to man mark. It's like, I think quite often with zonal, it's like nobody knows whose job. Like, and I suppose the difficulty is sometimes in football, a clever player, and I think you touched on this just now, Matt, is like a clever player will drift from their position. So like, I think we touched on this in formations the other day, like with sort of strikers, sort of a modern like strikers years ago sort of just stayed up front. Whereas nowadays, like a striker will sort of drop off. So it's then like, if you've been told to zonal mark, if that player then goes out of your zone, or quite often, because I suppose in football, the pitch is not set out into little areas. Like there's not like a little square or a little rectangle, and that's the right backs, and then this is the centre backs. So I guess the difficulty sometimes comes when a player is sort of drifting around the pitch, and you do find these players a bit like that. I mean, we've all played with players like that. Some of the listeners might even be a player like that. But I know you sort of touched on this the other day, mate. You sort of like to start playing as a sort of player striker that dropped in a little bit. So you were probably a little bit like that sort of player that drifted around and to make it harder to mark. But I think quite often that argument of, oh no, he's your man, or she you should be marking her, or that, like it's so common. You hear it so commonly in sort of grassroots adults football. Like nobody knows whose job it is, and nobody sort of does it. So I suppose with zonal, when you see it in a professional game in terms of like set pieces, I think zonal. It's funny, zonal doesn't really seem to work. I don't think as much as man marking. I don't know what it is. I don't know why. I don't know whether it's not worked on as commonly. But it's almost like yes, you've got your zone, but then how do you sort of prevent the runners? And I suppose, and the other thing I think is like if you've got a runner coming from midfield or on a set piece, a runner attacking the ball, I think the runner has always got a sort of a head start, I guess, for want of a better phrase. The runner sort of on a set piece, whether it be a midfield runner or the fullback sort of bombing on. I suppose if you're sort of just marking a zone, that player's always got sort of a run on you and sort of got the sort of upper hand, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I think with zone, I think it's that sort of. I think the biggest thing for me is that sort of unknown. And like I say, in grassroots adults football, like I say, I can talk for men's football. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've heard that conversation on a rainy sideline on a Sunday morning or Saturday afternoon. Whose job is that? What? No, that should have been the midfield, or that should have been the centre backs. And it's. I don't think we ever found the answer out. I don't think we ever got the answer, but it was just constant arguments. So I think that's sort of the thing I find with zonal is it's sort of I think it's something that unless you've worked on team, it causes disarray. It just causes like sort of nobody knows sort of what's going on quite often. So I think it's not. I don't think it's quite as structured, I guess, as the man marking. But yeah, anyway, sort of moving on from marking, I suppose similar to sort of possession football, sort of I suppose keep ball, which I guess is very I suppose it's very, very similar. But I mean, I think you touched on Arsenal earlier, mate. I would say sort of keep ball is more you're sort of trying to keep the ball, and I suppose keep ball can be. I mean, how often do you see a team? I don't know. 1-0 up, 2-0 up, 2-1 up, whatever, and they just keep possession. Like there's nothing worse than when you're in a game and you're chasing the game and the other team are just frustrating the life out of you. I mean, I've done it. I'm sure you've done it, Matt, coaching as well. Like there's nothing better than doing it yourself against another team because it's nothing better than sort of frustrating the opposition. But I think I suppose the best thing about it, I guess, from my point of view, is it's a great way to manage a game. And I think some teams can be quite guilty of leading a game and then trying to go and get that extra goal when sometimes you don't necessarily need it. I mean, and it's something that I think is talked about a lot in the professional game nowadays is managing the game and seeing a game out, because I think it's a tough skill. It's a tough skill to see a game out, because at the end of the day, when you're playing a game of football, the other team, well, I'd like to think so anyway, the other team wants to win just as much as you. So even though you're 1-0 up, I'd like to think no team's going to just roll over and say, all right, you've won. All right, thanks. But I think it's important to sort of try and keep possession of that ball and try and, I think I touched on it with possession football. It's like keep possession of that ball and not allow the other team to get that ball back and attack you and have a chance to score themselves. And I think it's a way to frustrate your opponents. And also I think like one of the best things that I really, really love about keep ball, and I only like this when it's my team doing it. I don't like it when it's the other team doing it. But the other team gets so frustrated, and then they end up rushing things. And then when they do get the ball back, they're trying to rush because they've not had the ball for the last 2 or 3 minutes. They're then rushing to try and get forward and get a goal because they might only have 10 minutes left or 5 minutes left or whatever. And I think also the same is when they're pressing you, they'll commit fouls. They'll sort of burn themselves out because they're chasing around here, there, and everywhere to try and sort of prevent you from keeping the ball away from them. And I think it's a great way of playing, but obviously it's got to be used at the right time. It's no good playing keep ball in the first 5 minutes when it's 0-0. It's obviously there's a time and a place to keep the ball and sort of prevent the other team from getting it. But yeah, like I said, I love it when it's my team, but when it's the other team, does it frustrate me? It frustrates the life out of me.
It is frustrating. It's such a skill as well, because you need the players who can be so calm on the ball and keep it and everything. So yeah, it's good. But then like at the same time, you kind of repeat myself on possession football, but like you kind of wait. You can then counter that by going, let's just wait for the mistake. They're just going to keep the ball, let them have it, and they will make a mistake. When they make a mistake, pounce on it. Use that high press to put them off a little bit. Maybe use that man marking we spoke about to then make one person uncomfortable on the ball, they're going to have a bad touch. I see it in the professionals, like they have bad touches all the time. Not a lot of the time, but a lot, So if you, especially at grassroots level or men's level or ladies football or professional football, anything, they're going to make a mistake at some point. So it depends on how patient you are. And I would always say to my teams to be patient, even when we have the football. So say we've got the ball, I'll always say like, wingers are a good example because sometimes I don't get the ball a lot. Be patient, keep your shape, etc., etc. So I'd say the same in reverse. We're playing against a team who just like to keep the ball. All right, wait for the mistake. It's going to happen at some stage. As long as you're disciplined and you're concentrated, you'll be fine. So yeah, it doesn't always work. But then, going back at that, completely different to keep ball is a route one football or long ball, some people call it. It's effective in a way, in the sense of like you're getting the ball forward quick. So you're putting the opposition on the back foot. If you're a centre back, bang, you're trying to find your striker. Right back, you receive the ball, bang, trying to hit the striker. Even the midfielders quickly get out the front. You're literally playing route one, and it kind of is what it says on the tin. You are just playing route one. You're going for the target, as in the front man, or just aiming for the penalty area or the final third or wide positions. You're literally just going to hit the ball long or into channels. And it's good in a way that like you're going to get more attacks. You're going to put the opposition under pressure. You're going to have chances. You're going to kind of, if you do it relentlessly, you're going to, especially at professional level, you're going to get the crowd excited because the balls, sometimes you see fans get annoyed all the time with just keeping the ball in at the back. They're like, oh, get it forward. And you get it forward. You get everyone excited, So the players might be able to feed off that excitement from the crowd or the parents or the supporters. So yeah, it's effective if you do it well, and you can work it as well. You haven't got to just go, let's lump it forward. You can say, right, let's hit the channels, let's hit it into space, let's hit it in between gaps. Let's not just hit the ball. Let's actually hit our striker, our tall striker who can win the ball in the air, or let's try and wait for them to come a bit further forward. And then when we win it, hit it quick, can't use it as like a counter attack, but quickly get it forward into a space. Have we got players that can run into a space if you hit it into a space? Have you got a big player who can win the ball in the air and have people running behind? So yeah, it's a good one. I think that you're always going to be in a game, and if you can, doesn't matter what level you're at, if you play route one football, you're going to be in the game. You're going to have chances because it's very direct. I feel sorry for like midfielders half the time because especially players who want to get the ball beyond the ball. It's the wrong team to play in, really, isn't it? So, but yeah, it can be very effective.
Yeah, a bit like when it comes to like route one, I think like again, like we spoke about we've spoken a lot about having the right players to play a certain style of football. I think the same applies for this one. But I think in terms of playing a route one, I think it's about. I think this one's quite important in terms of the opposition. Like, for example, I'm going to use Liverpool as another example, actually, but the other end of the pitch. There's no way I'd try and play route one against a team like Liverpool. Do you know what? I think I saw Palace, same game that I was talking about earlier. I saw Palace do it against, try and play long ball against Liverpool. And it was Van Dijk and I think it was Matip at the back. Literally every single ball, Van Dijk and Matip won. Every ball. I think it might have been Ayew, and in fairness, Ayew's not the biggest of guys. I think it was Ayew, but Van Dijk and Matip won every ball, and anything went over the top of Van Dijk and Ayew. I think was it Alisson in goal then? I think it was. Everything which went through to Alisson because Alisson was on the edge of his box. So I think it's important to play. If you are going to play this sort of style of play, it's no point playing it against certain teams because certain teams, if they're strong at the back, they're just going to win everything. And if you haven't got a player up there that's going to be able to challenge it, it's pointless. It's pointless. And I think it's important to sort of know the other team's strengths and weaknesses if you are going to go with this sort of style of play, because otherwise the ball's just going to keep coming straight back to you. The ball is just going to, as soon as you get it forward, before you know it, it's going to be back at you, and you're going to be back defending again. So, and that what we're talking, how long does it take to ping a ball 50, 60 yards and come back? 5 seconds? So within 5 seconds, you're already defending again, which which just seems a bit sort of counterproductive and doesn't really make any sense. I suppose the other sort of thing that you notice quite a lot with long ball and route one, and I think you sort of mentioned him in terms of like, it's not just a case of like sort of just pinging the ball up there, it's sort of knocking the ball into the channels or whatever. But how often do you see teams just, for want of a better word, just kick it up there? And it's like, yeah, okay, you're playing sort of a direct route one sort of style of play, long ball, but you still got to play the ball to somebody. It's no good just kicking the ball upfield and thinking, all right, hopefully our quick player gets onto the end of it. All right, great. Well, you can hope all you want, but hope's not going to get you too far in a game of football. You do need to have, I don't care if you're playing route one, high press, possession, whatever. There is a style, there is a certain amount of quality needed to play every single style of football. They're like, a lot of people sort of turn their nose up at route one football, but it's a style of football at the end of the day that if done right, it's really effective. But if you're just literally kicking the ball up there and just saying, all right, well, I don't know, you're Leicester, Jamie Vardy's fast, let's just hope he gets on the end of it. All right, he might get on the end of one or two, but hope's only going to get you so far in a game of football. You need to have a certain amount of skill and technique to obviously get you a result, get you a sort of a win in a game of football. So yeah, I think it obviously needs to be done in the right way, and just sort of pinging the ball up there or pinging the ball when the other team are quite strong defensively can be a bit pointless, I suppose. But yeah, let's move on to last one here. This is one of my favourites actually. I really like this, and I suppose it's a little bit old school. I guess it's like wing play, like using your wingers, using your wide players. Now, this is sort of one of my absolute favourites in terms of like, I love playing with width. Absolutely, like I think that should be like, I think most teams should play with width. I just don't see why you wouldn't. Why would you not try and make the pitch as big as you possibly can? Like, it just, obviously it's my opinion, and obviously football's all about opinion, but I just don't understand why you wouldn't try and make the pitch as big as you possibly can, because it gives you more space to play. I think that just getting those wide players on the ball and getting them sort of running at players and getting crosses in the box. And obviously that also depends on what sort of players you've got in your forward positions, or what sort of players you've got from midfield getting into the box. But it doesn't have to necessarily be a ball in the air to the back post or whatever. It could be sort of getting your ball to your wide players and driving to the byline and getting cutbacks into the box, which can obviously be so effective, which we see so much more in the modern game now. That sort of style of play. But yeah, I just think that we spoke of in the I think it was the talking about the possession football, about pulling players out of position. You think like when the ball goes out to a wide player, straight away you've already pulled one player out of the box because they're going to press the wide player. And then I've spoken about midfield runners. You're getting midfield runners in the box, and if it's sort of done at high intensity, and that ball comes in the box sort of early from the wide player, whether it be sort of a cutback, whether it be across to the back post, to the edge of the box, whatever it may be. It's quite often it doesn't necessarily have to be a cross. It could just be get the ball out to the wide player and then work the ball into the box another way. But I think just that stretching of the pitch is so effective and can be so useful for getting the ball into the box, whether it be, like I say, a cross, or whether it be a cutback, whether it be something to the edge of the box, whether it be back to your fullback and work the ball back across to the other side, just to sort of stretch the team out of position. But I think wide players are still so common in football. They're slightly different now. We sort of get inverted wingers and things like that these days. But I think wing play can still be so effective in the modern game. And I still love a good cross in the box and a good header. Obviously, I was talking about Tim Cahill last week. It's one of my favourite parts of football. So I think it can be so, like, a cross in the box, a decent cross in the box. It's so hard to deal with. Like, still to this day, when it's not like years ago, crosses into the box. I say years ago, when we were kids, it was a common way of playing. It's not so much now. It's more sort of, I suppose, a lot of teams opt more for the sort of possession style of play, I guess, these days. But a good cross in the box is hard to defend against. And I think I'd hate to play against a team that were just putting in cross after cross after cross after cross. It must be knackering defending all those crosses.
Yeah, I'd say if I'm playing against a team who play with good wing play, well, one example is PSG the other day. They played Bayern Munich last week, so they're playing the second leg tomorrow. So I've lost my days. So yeah, we're recording this when PSG are playing Bayern Munich, and PSG, like, they knew that Bayern Munich were going to cross the ball, and they did. They love it. So all they did was, I noticed they dropped, especially Mbappe, rather than waiting on the halfway line or kind of in the central area where he might usually be, or wide on the left, he kind of come like almost like inside left position, kind of dropped in a little bit and dropped in deeper, and everyone got set up for the cross. So they kind of almost like invited Bayern to have the cross, and then they knew that when they was going to win it for their defenders or their midfielders, obviously you're not, when you defend the cross, your header's not going to reach the halfway line, is it? If it did, then I'll be very impressed. I'm sure Van Dijk could do it, but they kind of cleared the cross, but they were picking up into spaces where they knew the fullback had committed himself already, and the wingers, like the front three, and then they exploited in spaces. It was so good to watch, and there's like one way I've never really thought about before. I was watching, I was like, this is so clever. I saw it every time the right back from Bayern Munich and the right-sided forward kind of got into those positions in the final third, Mbappe kind of just moved in that position where the left back would be, and it kind of offset Bayern Munich, and they caught them so much on the counter-attack in those positions. Obviously, it's a bit risky because you might not defend the cross every time. But I think if you're well equipped for the cross to come in every time, I think it's such a good one to exploit, because you know that they're going to get the ball in the box. You know they're going to. As long as you're nice and compact, even like if the ball's like one side of the pitch and they stretch the pitch, the attacking team stretch the pitch on the other side, I'd always tell my team just to leave them over there. Leave them over there. Be aware of them, obviously, open your body up a little bit, but focus on the ball and then kind of shuffle over to the end of the unit. If they do switch the ball, then go over. Kind of prevent the cross, but don't overcommit. Don't worry too much about the cross coming in too much, because you know you're set from behind, and then if you can win it, can you pick up the ball in like deeper areas, like the forward players, can they drop in a little bit deeper to support the cross? Because otherwise, if you win, someone crosses the ball and you win a header or you defend the cross, it then just comes to their midfielders and then they'll just get it out wide again, go again, and it kind of recycles. Whereas I noticed that PSG kind of nullified that. We use that word a lot today, but they nullified it by being smart, by the strikers dropping in very smart positions to then exploit the spaces which they left from getting across it. It's really good to watch. And one way that I'll definitely be running coaching sessions on from watching that is really, I've seen it a few times, but not as well as that. I think it's good they got a couple of goals from it as well. If you're going to have wing play, you've got to have people cross the ball well. You have to. And there's not many players that I can think of the top of my head who cross the ball well, very well. If you look at like the quality of crosses that David Beckham used to do, De Bruyne does now, Dani Alves used to do, they were good crosses. There's not that many people now, so like it's almost like kind of let them have it if you're comfortable and you're in your shape and everything. So yeah, I against the wing play, I would definitely exploit the spaces, because most of the time the crosses are coming in from the fullbacks now. So go and fill in that space. Maybe your striker can just go in that position where if one player bumps forward, get that striker to go into his position, try and stretch them out, so it gives you more space to kind of counter-attack in or win or exploit when you win the ball back. It's like providing the cover from the defensive, from defending the crosses, I should say. So I love this, mate. Styles of play. We can talk about it all day long. And we were having a chat with a child today, and we said about style of play, and they were like, "Well, what do you mean?" And we kind of explained it. They're like, "Oh, okay." So I think it's something that needs to be spoken about more, and maybe explain more to the younger generation. There's not just one way of playing football. It's not just attack, defend. There's so many other ways, and there's so many ways that you could implement your game plan. So yeah, it's interesting. But I've got a good question for you that me and Aaron have come up with. Well, so I've got a question for you guys, the listeners, and for Aaron. So the question is, if you are the England manager and you're in the European final this year, you can choose one style of play. What would you go for? We're going to ask Aaron's had the honours to go first. Tough question, this, but it's a one-off game. You get to choose one style to go and win the Euros for England. No pressure. What are you going for?
Parking the button. I'm joking. Do you know what? Like I've had, I suppose, do you know what? No different to probably any other football coach that has to make a decision when they play a game, or probably probably any sort of football fan when they sort of think, oh, I wish my team played like this or this. And you have all these different thoughts go through your mind. But do you know what? I've settled on one in particular, and the one I've settled on is the last time we just spoke about. Actually, is the wing play. And the main reason that I've chose wing play for England, in my opinion, and as we always say on the podcast, football is all about opinions. And I was saying this quite a lot to the kids today, actually, about we were talking about different things, and I was saying it's everyone's opinion. Although I did tell them that Messi and Ronaldo are the best players ever, and that's a fact. There's no debate there. They didn't like that, but but anyway. So back to my wing play. So I'll give you a quick reason as to why. I don't think we've got great wingers. Obviously, don't get me wrong, Sterling plays as a winger for us, as does probably Sancho. Foden's been playing there. Unbelievable players. Rashford plays in that sort of position, but they're not wingers. However, like I think you touched on it, Matt, the wingers, I suppose, in the modern game are the fullbacks. And in my opinion, we've got unbelievable cross to the ball in Trent, Alexander-Arnold. If Reece James plays there, or Kyle Walker or Trippier. On the other side, you've got Luke Shaw, Chilwell. So yeah, I think obviously it's going to be sort of obviously out of them sort of players, they're going to be probably the players that play in those positions. And I think, in my opinion, Harry Kane is one of the best headers of the ball, and his movement as well in the box is incredible. So I think, and I don't know, I don't particularly like England playing a possession sort of style. I just don't think it suits us. I don't think we've got the technical ability, in my opinion, to play that sort of game. So I'd rather we sort of get the ball out wide, get balls in the box, and yeah, I think that'd be sort of the most effective way that I would want to see England play in the Euros final, and then we could be out on the streets singing "Football's Coming Home," which can't wait for that after we get all those crosses in the box. what about you, Matt? What would you go for?
Love it. Get Kemp to the job if Southgate messes up. Look, I'm going to go with the high press because I have reasons. Because it's the Euro final. It's a one game. If you go for a defensive game, I love a defense. You know that I've done it. I've actually done it in the final before, and it backfired on me. If you go for a defensive game plan, it's a one-off game. If you lose that game, I know you can't think about losing, but you do in the back of your mind. I never try to think about losing. I always think about positives all the time, but you do have that thing in the back of your mind, and you never tell your players this, but what if we did lose? And I've kind of like grown up. I need to know that I'll have no regrets now. Whereas when I did my defensive game plan, I thought, right, I'll keep it nice and tight. We'll try and nick a winner because we're playing against a good side. Didn't work. We won them down in like 5 minutes, and then I told them plan B, but it took us ages to adapt to our plan B, which we did work on, but we didn't work on as much as plan A. So I'll go with high press because I don't think you have many regrets with that, because at least you can say you've gone for it. Everyone's gone for it. We've pressed the opposition. We put them under pressure. We're trying to force mistakes. We're pinning them back. We're really going for it. Going to get the crowd excited. Going to get all the nation excited. Specific to our players of England, we have a young team. We have a very young team. Depends on who Southgate chooses, but you know, Sterling young, Mount young, Rice young, Foden young, Kane's still young, Trent Alexander-Arnold young. They're all young players. They're all in their 20s. They're all young players, and I think we could keep that intensity up all game. You said that Liverpool, you know, before when they first started, they'll get a bit tired, didn't they, doing the high press during the second half, and they'll drop off a little bit. But I feel like the young fit players we've got, I feel they'll be able to do that the whole game, keep that high press going. And I feel like in a final, everyone's nervous. If you weren't nervous in the final, you're not human. Simple as that. So if you can like quickly press the other team, and you know, a lot of teams might say, a lot of managers might go, just settle into the game, you know, settle your nerves, keep the ball, like, you know, just get a few touches in early. Now, if they're saying that, let's put them under pressure. Let's make them make mistakes, because you know that's going to be in their heads all game now. Oh no, I lost the ball, whatever. And if you can offset them and unsettle the other team, it'd be amazing, because they're going to be nervous and mistakes will happen. So if you can force those mistakes and put pressure on it and kind of have that, you're going to be nervous yourself, but that fearless mentality, even if you lose, I think, do you know what? You went for it. And I think people, especially English people, will respect that. So, you know, if I ever get to a final, that's what I'll be doing. Hopefully the opposition's not listening to this. But yeah, I would go for a nice high pressing, high intensity, energetic, everything quick. Shutting them down, shutting off the pass, like off the ball as well, not the person on the ball, shutting the person off without the ball as well, giving them no breathing space. And I think the country would love that, and I think it'd suit England, and yeah, and then we'll be champions. And like you said, we'll be dancing in the street and throwing our lemonade in.
I love it, absolutely love it. Do you know? I was thinking about the high press, but I thought I can't contradict myself after saying that Harry Kane wouldn't be as effective in the Liverpool team as Firmino. But I don't think he'd be as effective as Firmino, but I still think he'd do a fantastic job in that sort of style of play for England. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think like England have a very young team, and I think like a high press could be so effective with sort of the young, energetic players you got. So yeah, but I think both styles of play could be effective, and who knows? Gareth Southgate might do a bit of both in both halves of the final if we make it there. You never know.
I can imagine Gareth Southgate's listening right now, and he's like, "Oh, which one?"
Yeah.
High press, weak play.
Yeah, I'm sure he is listening. He doesn't know what it's hard enough for him to pick the team as it is without us confusing him with his styles of play. Poor Gareth.
Exactly. Poor Gareth. What a job he's got though. Yeah, brilliant. Good. Well, yeah, if you've got any questions, guys, about style of play, let us know what you'd do if you were the England manager in the Euros. And you know what? There's loads more styles of play that we've actually missed. We were talking about it earlier, weren't we? So there's even new ones that are evolving every day. So it'd be interesting to hear what you've got to say, guys. But no, thank you for listening. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, and thank you everyone for listening again. And yeah, as always, I'm looking forward to next week again. Can't wait.
Top work. Thank you, mate.
Yeah, man. And you take care, guys. Speak to you next week.